it's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hockey News Big Show. I'm your host, Katie Gaus, joined by Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy. Guys, I'm feeling extra full. Got all my American Thanksgiving in yesterday. We're recording here on our Friday. But that means that the NHL season is now full speed ahead, right? Everything gets exciting. Everything gets more intense. The metrics keep coming. The predictions keep coming. But right now, there's one team who just doesn't care what month it is, what day it is. They've already got themselves penciled in for a spot in the Stanley Cup final with the way that they are playing. That's the Colorado Avalanche. The NHL saying that they are one of two teams over the past 45 years to have one regulation loss or fewer entering into the American Thanksgiving timeframe. So obviously that has passed. The only other team to do it was back in 23-24, those Boston Bruins. So, yeah, pretty dominant performance from Colorado so far. Let's start off with this question. Could this be, this Avalanche team, the best regular season team ever, Michael?
Probably not. Let's face it. There were some good teams in those original 6 eras. And if we're going to include those teams, like the Montreal Canadiens of that yesteryear were just, you're talking about Hall of Famers all throughout the lineup. And, even more recently, I really like that Tampa Bay team that just ran through the entire regular season and then stubbed their toe in the first round, getting swept by Columbus. But, to your point, this is a fabulous Colorado Avalanche team, and no real weaknesses. Everywhere you look, whether it's the forwards, the defense, and the goaltending. Now that Mackenzie Blackwood is back, they're just getting answers everywhere. So we'll see if it can continue. I don't think they're going to go the entire way with just one regulation loss. But
how long will they go? How long will they go? I mean, that's the question. I mean, now
how long can they go?
Yes. Ryan, what do you think about where this Avalanche group stacks up again? One regulation loss, very impressive. But as Michael alluded to, certainly there have been some pretty dominant teams, whether they were winning or losing, they were stacked. So what do you see this Avalanche team, comparing?
Well, it's interesting because, they're getting incredible performances from their best players. Nathan MacKinnon, I think he's on pace for like 140 points or something like that at this point. Cale Makar is not far behind. I think Cale Makar has 30 points already. So, do we see a defenseman hit 100 points? Like, when was the last time that happened? They're getting great goaltending. They have the depth. They have leadership. They also have motivation. Okay, because this is a team that has flamed out in the playoffs a couple of years in a row. And granted, they're in a very tough division, so it's not like they were playing scrubs or anything like that. But they have all the motivation in the world to get back to the Stanley Cup. And I think that's a really important component here. Yeah. How they stack up against, legendary Hall of Fame teams, it's tough to say now that we're in it. But, like Nathan MacKinnon's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. Cale Makar is probably going to be a Hall of Famer. After that, you have a couple of like Hall of Very Goods, in like Brent Burns and Gabriel Landeskog. But they just have like a really great balanced team. They have size, they have skill, they can move the puck from their own, end out. And like I said, they're getting great goaltending. So in that division, it's incredibly impressive that they've only lost one game in regulation. It will be interesting to see what happens after the Olympic break, because their best players are going to be busy. So they're not going to get rest.
Yeah.
But we shall see. I think what they're doing is incredibly impressive because, it's harder than ever to do what they're doing. Back in the original 6 era, there was usually 2 awful teams. They were usually Chicago and New York. You don't have that anymore. You could lose to Calgary or Nashville on any given night.
You mentioned motivation, Ryan, and, winning the Central is going to be so important, to avoid a matchup against Dallas in the first round. And, obviously that 2-3 matchup is always tough, no matter what division you look at. But if Colorado can run the table and, get a wild card team, that is going to be such an advantage.
Unless it's Edmonton.
Oh,
Yes. That's another story for another day. All right, well, let's play a game of to rebuild or not to rebuild, because that certainly is a question that's already swirling around a few teams at this stage of the NHL season. We've got Calgary, Nashville, and Vancouver. So kick us off, Ryan. If we were to go through each of them, who are we saying rebuild or not rebuild? What do we think?
Okay, Calgary rebuild for sure. I kind of assumed they were going to, but they haven't quite yet. They don't have a number one center. I think that's the big thing is if you look at your team and you don't have a number one center or at least like a 1B, then you're not a contender, right?
Mhm.
So right now, Morgan Frost is their number one center. The other two main pivots they have, Nazem Kadri and Michael Backlund, are 35 and 36 years old. Okay, so those are short-term guys. And if you look at their trade value, Kadri in particular would be amazing.
Yeah.
The Calgary Flames have made some nice picks recently. Zane Parekh could be a difference maker on the blue line, but they still need more high-end guys. So
Mhm.
Calgary for sure. Nashville, definitely. I think they have to accept that the Barry Trotz plan did not work. Time is not on their side when they got guys like Stamkos and Marchessault. Again, guys in their mid to late 30s, it had to work immediately. Like you can't wait a couple more years and hope that somehow
Right.
miraculously they get better.
Yeah.
And again, Nashville does not have a number one center of note. Ryan O'Reilly is an ideal number two, and he, he's despondent right now at the way the Preds have played. So I think you gotta start, like picking up big time assets and early in the draft. Vancouver, I think, needs a reset. I think they made some mistakes in free agency over the summer, but they could use some more high end guys. I think this is also a good opportunity to let some of their young players just sort of get more reps without the pressure of expecting to win. Guys like Jonathan Lekaramaki, Tom Villander, it's like even if they kind of fail, it's okay, and then you go into the summer and you say, all right, Vander Kane, that didn't work. Thanks for your service. You try to get a couple of guys that maybe can boost you again because, Elias Pettersson seems to have found a new game and it's been very successful for him. There's just not enough of, everything else. You've got Quinn Hughes and he's great. Goaltending, Thatcher Demko once again has not been healthy. So I think that's a reset. I don't think they have to blow the whole thing up. But of course, the X factor is if they think Quinn Hughes wants to leave, then you deal Quinn Hughes.
Correct. Michael?
yes.
That was a great yes. I was just thinking, yes
Agreed.
to all of that. You concur?
I concur.
It was excellent, Ryan. Thank you for doing that short essay that we just were able to provide you with and for your great service. And you know what? This is a really good moment to stop and pause and also give a shout out to another member of Ryan's household, his wife, for blessing us with the creation of this incredible sweater that he is wearing that she made.
Yes. We saw it on
I did not know this.
Yeah, we saw it on a British comedy game show called Would I Lie to You? And I'm like, that's a dope sweater. And then she secretly made it for me. Like she reproduced it. So yes, amazing job as always.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. I look at it and I see a bulldog at some points. Is it a bulldog?
Oh yeah.
And then if I look other times, I see like almost like an alien figure kind of kissing like some sort of creature.
I gotta
So it's one of those ones, left brain, right brain.
There you go.
Look at it for long enough. I also
Ah.
feel like every time I look at bulldogs, they just like remind me of certain like older men. Like they just like what grumpy old man.
I'm getting that bulldog look now, right?
Yeah. Oh, there we
Fight
go.
it.
All right.
Fight the bulldog.
A great moment for a great sweater. Moving forward, let's talk about a team that has been undergoing their rebuild that we've been discussing and is now starting to reap some of the benefits of it. What are our thoughts on the Anaheim Ducks, what they've done, and more importantly, what they could potentially be considering with the hot start as the trade deadline continues to always be a topic? What are we thinking Anaheim might be doing, Michael?
It's a good question because, no one, I don't know, say no one expected Anaheim to be this good. I'm sure internally they were like, hey, we went pretty big in the offseason and we have Joel Quenneville and we've got a young core that's ready to pop, and true to form. They have been one of the so-called surprises. Do you tinker with it, or you just kind of just let it ride and, continue along that evolution? I guess the one guy I would look at if you're looking to say, okay, would a team be interested in this guy? And could we maybe shore up some area that we need? Frank Vetrano. 2 years ago, this is a guy that scored 37 goals. This year, because of all the additions, his role's kind of been diminished a bit, and he's only scored, I think, 2 goals this year. He's 3 points, definitely underperforming. At 3.65 million, he's still pretty good value. And I say that like good value on a trade market. Like there's some teams that could use some secondary scoring. So, maybe that's a guy that you dangle and say, okay, well, if we deal Vetrano, maybe we can get further help on the back end. Maybe we can get some, maybe it's a penalty kill specialist. Nothing like, we're not looking for a number one center because I don't think that's what Anaheim needs. But, I think that's the kind of move that I would think about making.
I like it. Ryan, what do you think?
I agree with Mike. I also would add that, Pavel Minchikov, the young defenseman, has been sort of concerned about his lack of participation because the Ducks have been so good. And, he sort of got passed by a couple of guys on the back end. So there's an asset, too, where, you're kind of dealing from a position of strength where it's obviously like you don't need Minchikov the way you thought you might have 2-3 years ago. So, yeah, could you flip him in a hockey trade for like a penalty killer or, another veteran, as Mike pointed out? So I do think that Anaheim's in a good spot where they don't have to really subtract from their lineup if they want to add. But they're in such a good position now that you kind of say like, hey, like keep rolling.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, again, with the hot start, it certainly, can be, a sign of confidence for your players if the team is making moves to say, look, we are appreciating the work that you've put in. Maybe they're overachieving right now, but they're certainly taking steps towards showing that this rebuild is working and that they are going to be a contender soon if they aren't, in the playoff mix when it all is said and done at the end of the regular season. How about a team who it's funny to say this, right? They're in the mix, but everyone in the East is in the mix, right? So the Philadelphia Flyers, they're currently sitting just outside of a wild card spot, which is great. They've got Rick Tocchet taking over, and they've got a lot of young talent, bringing in Trevor Zegras and seeing kind of his resurgence. Like there's good things happening in Philly. Dan Vladar has been really excellent in net for them, but are they at a point where they really are considering making any kind of moves other than just continuing to stay the course, right? Like, is this just a team that is growing, continuing to get better, but isn't making any kind of crazy things happen because they know that they are not at the point of being contenders yet, Michael?
So when you look at the Philadelphia Flyers, and, Ryan kind of mentioned this earlier with some of the rebuilding teams, they are very thin down the middle. Sean Couturier right now is their number one center. The number two center is Noah Cates. And, when you've got some high profile wingers like Trevor Zegras and Matvei Michkov, it behooves you to get a center that can get them the puck and that can be strong down the middle. So that's the area of concern I have with Philly, is that they're just not deep enough, and they just don't have that, prototype, number one center, or even like, I think Couturier is better served as a number two or even a number three center, to be honest, at this stage in his career. They need an offensive guy down the middle, and that's where I'd be looking. And I don't know if a Nazem Kadri would be a good fit there. Obviously a veteran would help kind of further the development, but that's where I'd be looking. And if I'm the Flyers, trying to get someone that can grow with the team would be an ideal ad, but I just don't know who that guy is really.
Yeah, it feels like Kadri's more poised to go somewhere that he can contend right away, especially given the age factor of the rest of Philly and what their long-term looks like. Ryan, what do you think about the Flyers' current state of the union?
Yeah, they're really kind of fascinating. In terms of future centers, I mean, they did just draft Jack Nesbitt in the first round. He's a big center, but I wouldn't pencil him in for a couple of years. Jet Luchenko is another option, but I think he's probably more a number 2 center at best. For me, when I look at the Flyers right now, there are 45 players in the NHL that have scored at least 10 goals. None of them play for the Flyers. So goal scoring has not been optimal for them, but I wouldn't do much. If I would kind of hold if I was the Flyers, because Matej Michkov, is having a bit of a sophomore slump. And if you believe in him, and, from what we've seen in his rookie season, we should, he has the potential to be that like 30, 35 goal scorer in the NHL. So I do think that you kind of go through the growing pains right now. I mean, you do have a new coach in Rick Tocchet, who has obviously had some success right off the hop, but what does year 2 look like? And I would also say, how fascinating is it that Anaheim got better once they got rid of Trevor Zegras, but Trevor Zegras has been awesome in Philadelphia. Like, how often does that work out where it's like, yeah, he was the problem? It's like, he was also the solution, just in a different orange jersey.
Something about the orange. He just needed to get away from the California. And I think a lot of that definitely with Zegras and kind of the personality that we know him to be. It's not a secret, that he's a player that you had to have the right approach with. Tocchet seems to have unlocked the way to communicate with him. It feels like they have a very good relationship. There's trust being built there. I love the fact that he says Zegras calls him Taco. So clearly there's some fun happening there too, because Zegras has such a high level of skill and the ability to be so creative. But you also have to balance that with being responsible and playing the game the right way. And so that is the challenge of Trevor Zegras. And so far, it feels like Philly's doing a better job of managing it. So we'll see how he continues to develop there. All right, here's a fun one for all the Oilers people out there that are always worried about their goaltending. Kevin Weeks reported that Penguins goalie Tristan Jarry is one of the names drawing significant interest as an option for the Oilers. And Jarry does have some history in that neck of the woods, having played juniors for the Oil Kings. So start us off, Ryan. Is Jarry a good solution to the Oilers goalie struggles? Or, who else could they be targeting? Again, this is the question of every year. Especially when it comes to the Oilers, and they have been to the Cup final. So it's feeling a little different this year with Skinner, but in general, what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one, because my first thought was like, doesn't Pittsburgh need Tristan Jarry? Like, like the Penguins aren't out of the hunt by any means. They probably have a better record than the Oilers.
They're all in on Sheilov. That's it. They're
all in on Sheilov's apparently, yeah. And Murashov, who's also playing well. But Jarry is playing well for the Penguins. I'd be a little reticent, because Jarry is kind of a hot and cold goaltender. We've seen some incredible highs from him. We've also seen some lows, and that's what we've seen from Stuart Skinner as well. So maybe Jarry's a little more reliable, but again, we've talked about this on the show before. Like, Edmonton gives up an incredible amount of high danger scoring opportunities. So there's a lot to fix there. And I would just be worried that, that's not necessarily the silver bullet that everybody thinks it is.
What's funny about the Edmonton Oilers goalie situation, guys, is that, Skinner only makes $2.6 million and Cal Pickard makes $1 million. It's like, what do they expect from a goaltending duo that is basically getting combined like backup money?
They're getting David Rittich money.
Like, I love what our friend of the show, Devin Dubnik, said. And he's like, send Binnington there. Like, it's just let's go all in with the kind of chaos. But Binnington's making $6 million. So I don't know what has to happen for that kind of contract to make sense. Obviously, Jarry's a little cheaper at 5.3. But again, it's like when you're the Edmonton Oilers and you're paying McDavid and Draisaitl so much of what you have under the cap, and let's include Nugent Hopkins and Hyman and Bouchard in that category, and I guess Darnell Nurse. Like, those 4 guys or 5 guys are really eating up a significant portion. It doesn't leave you a whole lot of wiggle room to round out the pieces and get a quote unquote number 1 elite goalie. So I do think that Skinner, he probably gets more maligned than he probably deserves. And to the point where I think his next landing spot, it's going to be like, he's really going to show the Oilers kind of what they missed, because again, for the value that you have him, a guy who's taking you to back-to-back cups, they treat him like he's just the worst goalie on the face of the earth.
Which is important to know. Our producer told us this before we started recording, that I guess the Oilers are having their signing, like the whole autograph day today, where fans can line up and get that opportunity. And there is a report on CTV that a group of Calgary fans made the trip down to Edmonton just to show solidarity and support with Stuart Skinner, excuse me, not Jeff. But I love the fact that there's this much of a conversation happening, that this report even exists. Like this abuse that's going on in Edmonton of the goaltenders, who ultimately, like you mentioned, Michael, aren't making that kind of money that they should be out there making every all-star save. But I have a lot of time for that they're trying to show them a little love. It just feels like a very Canadian thing to do, that you've got fans from a different team coming down to show some support to a different goalie.
And that's probably the other thing to kind of consider, is like, you have to find a goalie who's mentally strong to play in that market.
True.
It's a team that, if you're in Edmonton, you're going, all right, this is the year. We've got Connor McDavid for a limited time. We have to win a cup. We've been to the final back-to-back years. Whoever we get, you got to win us a cup or you're a failure. Now that weighs heavily on a goalie. Yeah. Like, I don't care who you are. You could be Patrick Waugh in his prime, and that's a lot of pressure.
No question. That's a great point. All right. Well, let's move on. Also, Ryan, I do love your point where you're like, well, don't the Penguins need Jarry? And then whenever we get these insiders reporting stuff, which you always have to take so much stuff with a grain of salt. But I love the thought of like what Tristan Jarry is thinking when he's like, aren't we winning?
Yeah. I don't want to go.
Would you rather have, if you're Penguins, like, this could be a great move by Dubas. Like, would you rather have Stuart Skinner, or would you rather have Tristan Jarry? Like, Tristan Jarry is not that good of a goalie.
No, I mean, it's not like, I'm not sure exactly what the massive amount of interest on the Oilers.
If I'm the Penguins, I think I'd rather have Skinner.
I don't know. I kind of feel like you just like dance with the one that brought you. When it comes to goaltenders that are probably on the same level, it's like, Tristan Jarry already lives here, and all the guys know him. Like, why overcomplicate things?
That's fair. We'll be trading similar toys. All right, how about this one? The Montreal Canadiens have claimed forward Sammy Blais off of waivers from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and there's been this back and forth. They just keep stealing him from each other. So what are our thoughts, Brian, on the move by Montreal to get their guy back?
Yeah, I like it sort of long-term. And when I say long-term, I still mean this season, but later on in the season, and, assuming that Montreal is in the playoffs, because Blais does have size, because he can play physical, and, bring a couple of different things where, we've talked before about how Montreal's forwards are on the small side in general. So Blais obviously, helps rectify that a bit. And, they brought up Florian Jekai the other night against Toronto, who's obviously very physical. So I think it's a nice move. It's a depth move for sure. I mean, they waived him once, and that's how they lost him to Toronto. But I do think Blais is like a pretty useful player for them down the road.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think about the move back and forth, taking guys?
Yeah, I think, Sammy Blais is a guy that, obviously Craig Berube is going to miss. I think the reason they did claim him off waivers is because Berube had that history with Sammy, and, he kind of plays that same style that Craig Berube has been trying to get the rest of the Leafs to play. But this is, obviously Montreal is dealing with some stuff right now in terms of injuries up front. So, they need bodies, wherever they can find them. And, having the history with Sammy, like, they know they can just inject him into the lineup and not have to worry about kind of teaching him anything. It's a nice kind of, I can almost consider it a stopgap situation.
Yeah, the waiver wire is awesome, because it's like, even having seen it firsthand, like being with a team where like this guy's on waivers, but he's literally just sitting there chilling at your morning skate, and like everyone's just like staring at him like, are you still on our team? Are you leaving? And then like they leave or they go and they like do they even pack? Like, sometimes they don't even end up
Mm.
going anywhere. It's such a fun, like, little nuance of, like, the hockey world when you get to really see how the waiver wire looks in real life, where this guy's just kind of sitting there like, are we all still friends? I'm not sure. Might be your enemy now. Who knows? Like, it's just a great dynamic to witness. So,
Mm.
fun stuff there. I'm sure Sammy is happy just to be picked up in general, right? That's what guys want. They just want to be in
There
the
you go.
NHL. All right. Well, for
What do
over
you want?
75 years, the hockey news has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now you can get 12 issues delivered right to you with stories, stats, and a bonus gift to kick things off. So head over to thn.com to get in on the action as you get all those holiday gifts ready for someone special. The gift of thn.com subscription would be a good one. All right. Well, coming up, we've got the BetMGM playbook with Gary Pearson. Well, it's time now for the BetMGM playbook. And for that, we have Gary Pearson joining us. And Gary, as we've officially now passed the American Thanksgiving mark, we continue to have the fun conversations about what possible playoff scenarios would look like. And of course, the odds makers are always keeping us updated on what these likely matchups for a Stanley Cup final could be. The consistent factor we seem to see is Colorado versus Florida, Colorado versus Carolina. There's a lot of Colorado thrown in there. We see some Dallas, we see some Edmonton. So what are the odds makers saying right now about what most likely matchup we could be potentially looking at?
Yeah, you definitely nailed it on the head there. So we're looking at there's two that are as likely. So we have Florida, Colorado, and then you also have Carolina, Colorado.
Okay.
So both are at 7.41% in terms of the odds makers probabilities.
Okay.
Colorado, again, unanimous across the board. And then you have the Panthers, who, if they make the final, would be in their fourth successive final. And you have the Hurricanes, who are looking to finally jump and clear that final hurdle on the Eastern Conference final. And 2 of the last 3 years they've been to the Eastern Conference final. They look good this year. They've been tripped up by Florida in both of those Eastern Conference finals. So both intriguing propositions, and that's where the odds makers have the most favorite and most likely matchups at the moment.
Yeah, not surprising that Colorado's there, eh, Katie? Like we just talked about it all show, how dominant the Avalanche have been. It feels like on the West, we could just put it in a Sharpie. Colorado Avalanche versus to be named later.
Yep. Yeah, it really is. It's just kind of an open invitation at this point with their one regulation loss. So certainly Avalanche are dominating. Gary, we talk about, what the odds makers are saying. And while there's lots to be said for numbers and probabilities, a lot can also happen in an NHL season. But if there was a matchup that you would, maybe from an internal perspective, a fan perspective, want to see something that's going to generate exciting games, maybe there's a little bit of physicality, maybe it's high scoring, but what would be kind of an ideal Stanley Cup final matchup in terms of what's going to be the most entertaining?
Okay, so before I hear a collective groan and moan, I'm actually going to say the Panthers and Oilers. Now, hear me out. Okay, so this is an interesting one, right? So if they make the final again, it would be interesting to canvas Oilers fans to say, how do you feel about it? Would they be fired up about the chance to exercise the Panthers' demons? Or would it be, would they be more apprehensive than a university student going into a final exam unprepared and without studying? Now, also, no team in the history of all 4 big 4 sports in North America have ever lost 3 successive finals to the same team. So that kind of going down in infamy would be quite the storyline. And I also think it would be a bloodbath. I mean, like they already loathe each other. And you can imagine how highly competitive that final would be with the Oilers on the cusp of infamy. So that's the only reason. Like, I understand the attrition. I understand people don't want to see the same old teams in the final, but those storylines for me are pretty intriguing. The other one I actually like is the rematch of the 2022 final. I'd love to see Colorado play Tampa Bay. Both cores are still intact. So that would be a kind of a neat throwback. And then finally, I'd love to see an all-Canadian matchup, and I'd love to see Ottawa and Edmonton play. Far-fetched at the moment, probably. Right now, the probabilities say under 1%, but the Eastern Conference is a logjam. The Oilers, hopefully, at some point, will smell the sniffing salt. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah,
Katie, how cruel would that be if Connor McDavid finally gets to the final again, and he's like, "All right, I don't have to face Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers. Oh wait, I got to face his brother, who's a bigger pain in the butt and Brady Kachuk. Like it just seemed cruel.
Yeah. Well, and I love the stat, Gary, because I think it's great hearing that, no one's ever lost 3 consecutive times to the same team. But it's thinking like, because it's so hard to get back there, both teams, right? It's not just hard for one team to make it to a final year after year. To have the same opponent showing up and then to beat you, I can't even imagine, like you said, infamy, really, it is the best word, what the Oilers would go through if they were to set that record for the very first time as losing again to the Panthers. But again, Florida has their own work to be done. They've obviously got some injuries. They've got some key players who are still missing. So there'll be someone, we hopefully expect will pick up towards the end of the year once they get those guys back and get healthy. But they're a team that once they get into the playoffs, that's just the scary part, right? And we know that there are teams like that. We've seen that happen in the past. All right. Well, what about this, Gary? We'll wrap it up with this one. Just what do you actually think? All bets aside, all odds aside, what do you truly believe will be a Stanley Cup final matchup when we fast forward to the end of the season?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Panthers and the Avs. I still have faith in this Florida team. It feels like they just playing like an extended game of rope-a-dope. I just feel like at some point they're gonna kick into high gear. They know it's an 82-game schedule.
Sure.
They're 6 points back. Okay, they're 14th in the East. Okay, but they're 6 points back of first, tie for first.
Yeah.
So like with a run that they're capable of, an 8-game run, a 9-game run, the Avs have won 10 in a row. Anything that's close to that, and they're going to be near first place again. And I think that it will come to fruition at some point, maybe around the holidays when they get Matthew Tkachuk back. He's a catalyst. So I'm still going with the Avalanche, or just a juggernaut, just a wagon. At this point, I can't see too many people tripping them up again long season, but that's who I'm going with.
Yeah, Michael, it kind of feels like if there is going to be any change in Colorado's status, it's going to have like some crucial, horrible slew of injuries that changes everything. But when you kind of look ahead, what do you think? Do you agree with Gary's prediction, or what do you like?
Yeah, when you're talking about a slew of injuries, Katie, like we're going to have to see like McKinnon, Makar, Wedgwood, and Blackwood both be injured. Right now, yeah, for me, Colorado's such an easy pick from the West, as I mentioned earlier. I like the Colorado-Carolina matchup. I think Carolina, eventually they have to get over the hump. I think they have the team right now to do it. You look at where they are in the standings. Again, they're almost like the Colorado Avalanche of the East, where you're looking at that lineup going, where are the holes? I don't see any holes, and it feels like this team still has another gear to reach. So, I think that could be interesting, and I really like the rematch. I covered that Tampa Bay Colorado series, as I believe you did too, and what a fast, highly skilled series that was. I didn't want it to end.
Great. It was good hockey. You had emotions on the ice, off the ice, the classic John Cooper press conferences after a loss. It really gave us a little bit of everything. That would certainly be a fun one, again, with two groups that still have most of that important core from that rematch intact. So lots of good scenarios, but as we know, a lot of hockey left. And once you get into a 7-game series, anything can truly happen when it comes to the NHL. Hot goalie, injury, who knows? It's always fun to watch. That's why hockey is one of the best. But Gary, thank you so much for joining us for the BetMGM Playbook. We always appreciate it. We will see you again next week. Now it's time to get into some rapid fire. Thanks so much, Gary. All right, guys, let's get into some rapid fire now. We've got a lot to be thankful for, as we all know, but which team in the NHL has the most to be thankful for right now, Michael?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Like when we say thankful, is this a team that we're saying was an underachieving, like a team that we didn't expect anything and they're kind of overachieved? Because if that's the case,
your definition.
If that's the case, I'm going to say the Seattle Kraken. Like, they've got to be thankful that they're in a playoff spot right now because, A, I didn't expect them to be in a playoff spot when all is said and done, and B, they don't score any goals, Katie, okay? Like, how are you in the playoffs when you literally do not score? You're winning like 1-0 in a shootout the other night. Like, it's just a bad team. And the fact that they're still in a playoff spot is just like, you know what? Eat some turkey, boys. You deserved it.
He's like thankful, but also very much like kind of like blissful of like, this isn't going to last forever though, right? Because like, what are we doing here? Actually, nobody thinks this is going to
This
last,
is
right,
not
guys?
how the sport is supposed to be played.
This is not how we do hockey. All right, Ryan, what's your definition of thankful, and who should be thankful right now?
I'm going to go with the New York Islanders, who are thankful that they won the lottery to draft Matthew Schaefer. Think about our impression of the Islanders 12 months ago, because they weren't even the worst team. They were just kind of like in that murky middle, and they jumped up in the lottery significantly to get Matthew Schaefer. And now it's like, not only is he the Calder front runner, but like Bo Horvat has gone off. Like Bo Horvat's been one of the greatest goal scorers in the league this year. So Schaefer, I think, has gone a long way in energizing that New York team that frankly looks reborn.
Yeah, I like it. This is good stuff. All right, here's another one for you guys, because as we are recording, obviously, it is Black Friday here in the States. A lot of people don't have work. A lot of holiday shopping has already kicked off. So we've got some afternoon games. We've got the Lightning and the Red Wings. They've got a 12 o'clock game. We've got the Rangers and the Bruins at 1 o'clock game. So lots of hockey happening in the afternoon, which begs the question, do you like afternoon games or evening games better, Michael?
Okay, I like afternoon games when it's World Juniors. All right, for some reason, afternoon and World Junior hockey, that just is the holiday season. For the NHL, it's a man's league. Okay, you got to be at nighttime. Okay, the boys can play during the day, the men at night. NHL games during the day reminds me of like the school day games where you just crowd the rink with all the kids who get to skip school and go there, and it's just a lot of screaming. So it comes down to that.
Yes, very much screaming.
It's very good.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I prefer night games, although if I'm on the West Coast for any reason and there's a hockey game on earlier because of the time change, that feels like the greatest little treat, where it's like, oh, hockey's on. So it's like I watch hockey and then I go cover a game later on. So that's very fun. I do kind of like the school day games because, the traffic is not as bad. If I'm driving to an OHL game, the traffic at like 10 in the morning is not as bad as it would be if the game was at 7, and I would have to leave in the middle of the afternoon anyways.
As long as you go into the game like you go into a Pig Destroyer concert, Ryan, and you stuff your ears with toilet paper.
Exactly. I'm seeing cattle decapitation in 8 days, 8 or 9 days.
No screaming kids though, right?
I don't think it's all ages.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, with a name
the rest
like
of us will be screaming.
Cattle decapitation, that's
stuck Katie's face.
Super friendly. I wasn't sure what he was talking about at first. For a second, I thought he was like going to some demonstration, and I was like, "That's horrific. Why would you watch?"
They are vegan.
This is called. I was gonna say it's called like non-vegan metal, but you're saying they're vegan.
Oh yeah,
that's incredible. Okay, there's just a whole another world that exists that I know nothing about. But for my answer to this question, I would say that there's a sweet spot for the afternoon game, and the sweet spot is a 4 o'clock game. I love the 4 o'clock game, but I'm also thinking about it purely from a broadcasting standpoint, because it's like it's too early that they won't have a morning skate, so you get to kind of like have the morning to yourself. But then like when you leave the rink, you still have time to do normal things and not feel like it's just straight to bed. So I would say the 4 o'clock game is the happy broadcaster sweet spot in my mind. All right, how about this? Gary Bettman says the next NHL expansion team will cost $2 billion. So if you had very, very well done, Michael. If you had $2 billion lying around, would you pay that for an NHL expansion team? And where would you want that team to be, Ryan?
Ooh. I mean, if I only had $2 billion, I don't know if I'd buy an NHL team. But if I had $2 billion that I could spare, around, then yeah, if it was just kicking around, then yeah, why not? As for where to put it, it feels like Houston would be the most obvious place, just in terms of like market, population, that sort of thing. A natural rival in Dallas, in state there. And then I could have amazing food all the time, whether it's barbecue or all the other great stuff they have in Houston. So that'd be kind of fun.
Katie, you did not say if it was 2 billion Canadian or US dollars. I'm going to assume you meant Canadian, so I'm going to put it in a Canada here. Let's give Canada another team. First choice would be Quebec City. Probably a losing venture if you're going to have to spend $2 billion and you're going to be Quebec City.
Oh, yeah.
Second option, let's get another team in Toronto, right? A second team. I think that would do well. Put a little bit more pressure on those Maple Leafs to get their act together as well.
I love it. Yeah, that classic issue that we have between U.S. dollars and Canadian dollars and miles per hour and kilometers.
$2 billion is like $500,000.
All these conversations all the time. We're just on different pages here, but yes, all right. I like it. Those are good answers. Okay, here's one last one before we wrap it up. There was like a viral video that got tweeted out of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, the best name to say in hockey. Went to a bar like almost 1 a.m. after he got back from losing to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Quick trip back to Buffalo, obviously. And people were criticizing the accountability that the Sabres players have after a loss by being out there in that situation. Again, this is the night before Thanksgiving. There's nothing the next day. It's traditionally a very big night to just go out, whatever. So yay or nay to a player choosing to go out to a bar after a loss? Because when I first saw this tweet, my first thought was, what did you want him to do? Like go curl up in a ball and cry until the next skate? So are we in agreement on that? I mean, it's situational, but what do you think, Michael?
Okay. Obviously, what players do in their own time is their own business. Yeah. However, it's not a good look. Like, this isn't losing to the Penguins, but you're the Anaheim Ducks or something like that. Okay. You're not in a playoff spot. That loss put them in the basement of the standings again. And, Buffalo had briefly climbed out of the basement. So, again, let the guy live his life, put the cameras away if you see him at a restaurant. But at the same time, UPL, come on, man, read the room. You're on the worst team in hockey. Right? You need to be more cognizant of the fact that this fan base just wants a winner, and this is not a good look.
That's fair.
All right, I'm going to back him up, though, because if you play for the Buffalo Sabres this year or any of the past few years, you're allowed to drink whenever you want. Whether you're a player, a fan, like ownership, you do what you got to do to survive. And I will also say, back in the day, when you talk to players, from the 80s or whatever, especially the enforcers, they'd be like, yeah, I would fight a guy like twice in a game, and then we'd see him out at the bar. He still went out to the bar, so I think it's totally cool. Yeah, you leave it at the rink.
Yeah, well, we always talk about the Sabres banners that they can hang. The newest banner is, we can drink whenever we want.
Yes.
until
right.
things get better.
No closing time.
That's right. Good stuff today. I think we will end it on that wonderful note. And we'll sign off by saying cheers to all of our friends that are Buffalo Sabres fans. Yeah. All right. That does it for this episode of the Hockey News Big Show. Katie Gaus with Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy. Cheers, and we'll see you all next time.